God, I thank you that I am not like other people, swindlers, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I pay tithes of all that I get. But Jesus doesn't say any of this stuff is untrue. He's not saying this man is lying, but he's bragging. And he's looking down on someone that doesn't fit what he looks at as his level of perfection. None of us would ever do that, would we? We absolutely wouldn't do that. But have you ever thought to yourself, looking at someone in the world and looking at their sins, and how could people be like that? I would never do that. With the idea, of course, that that is a bad sin they're doing, and that's what the Pharisees looked at other people too. That's a bad sin they're doing. Being self-righteous is not a bad sin. Being a hypocrite is not a bad sin. Well, they wouldn't admit they were hypocrites either. But that's a bad sin. What are we saying when I would never do anything like that? Or what if we just feel the need from time to time to remind ourselves, especially when we're having problems in life, I'm a good person. How many times you see that on TV? Somebody's had some terrible thing happen, usually an expose by the news people of somebody that looked like one thing and find out is another. Tears in their eyes. I'm a good person. Somebody called Jesus good one time, and you know what he said? Why call me good? There's only one good, and that's the Father. Of course, Jesus was perfect and sinless, but his idea, I believe here, is that God is perfect, and I'm in the flesh now, and to that extent, I'm not equal with my Father. But we sometimes have to pat ourselves on the back, don't we? And our society actually encourages that. I'm okay, you're okay. All these books that come out, these self-help books, are all set on you thinking you're a good person. Nobody puts out a book and says, I'm a sinner. And it doesn't make a bestseller if they do. That the only good about me is what God has done for me. We have to worry about pride because pride really does go before a fall, as it did with Peter. Satan discovers something else about Peter. Now, Satan isn't anywhere near as bright and sharp as he thinks he is, but he seems to know human nature, simply because he keeps prodding us with temptations and we keep giving in, and so he's pretty sure he knows what people are like. And he got it right with Peter in this occasion. Let's go back to Luke 22. In Luke 22, in verse 33, right after Jesus had told him that Satan demands to sift you like wheat, Peter said, Lord, with you I am ready to go both to prison and to death. And that's a noble thought. And I want to tell you, I hope that I would be too. But having read about Peter, I'm never going to say, I hope I never say, Lord, I am ready. I hope I will be. I hope I will be. But Jesus said to him, I say to you, Peter, the rooster will not crow today until you have denied me 3 times. Denied 3 times that you know me. And Peter didn't believe that, as we've already seen. He kept on insisting that's not so in the other passage we read. But we know better. For instance, we go over to verse 54, and we're all familiar with the story. Everyone has fled, including Peter, but now Peter is sneaking back up. He's too curious to stay away. And having arrested Jesus, they led him away and brought him to the house of the high priest. But Peter was following at a distance. After they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter was sitting among them. Try to imagine what's happening here. He can see his Lord over there being examined by these people, not treated at all like a lord, treated like a common criminal by these people. And these are, after all, the people that Peter has known all along were the leaders of the Jews, the high supreme court of the people with the power. And a servant girl, seeing him as he sat in the firelight and looking intently at him, said, this man was with him too. Lord, I'm ready to go with you to prison and to death. This man was with him too. How does Peter respond? Jumps up and said, I'm going to stand up for my Lord? No. Woman, I do not know him. And I can't help wondering what's going through Peter's mind after he says this. But apparently he's pushed out all the conscience part that would say, Peter, remember what you said before? A little later, another saw him and said, You're one of them too. But Peter said, man, I'm not. He's getting, a little more disturbed now. What's happening with Peter? It's a very common thing. It's called fear. It looks like these people are going to cause my Lord to be killed. And I'm not ready to die yet. Lord, I'll go with you, even to prison and to death. But not today. Not right now. After about an hour had passed, another man began to insist, saying, certainly this man also was with him, for he is a Galilean too. But Peter said, man, I do not know what you're talking about. And immediately while he was still speaking, a rooster crowed. I'm starting to sweat because it's a little warm in the pulpit as it is sometimes. But I can imagine Peter was sweating a lot, even though they had to have a fire to keep warm. He is scared. And he doesn't want anybody to know he has anything to do with Jesus Christ. But the rooster crowed, and the Lord turned and looked at Peter. Oh, it just about gives me chills to think of my Lord doing that to me. And looked at Peter. And Peter remembered the word of the Lord. This has only been a few hours before, at best. But he remembers now. The fear has dropped enough for him to at least remember something. How he had told him before a rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. And Peter went out and he wept bitterly. But you see, we all know the story of Peter. So we know that's not where it ends. He went out and wept bitterly. Peter is going to repent. In fact, I think the weeping bitterly shows he already has. And the Lord has already said to him, when he said that Satan is going to sift you like wheat, that when you turn again. The Lord knew Peter better than Satan knew Peter. There's not a one of us here that Satan hasn't tempted and caused to sin. But we're not going to let that be the end of our lives. You realize that's what happened to Judas? He was full of remorse. He threw the money back into the leaders there. He didn't want to have any part of it. Did he go to his Lord then and said, Lord, I am sorry, forgive me? No, he went and hung himself. He had worldly remorse. Peter had a change of heart. We're all aware of that. In Revelation chapter 21 and verse 8, after listening the wonders of heaven, John describing what that's going to be like, in verse 8 he gives the contrast. Those people that are not going to be in heaven. And there's a whole list of sinners there, but right at first, what is it? The cowards. The cowardly. Peter had to get over being a coward. You and I have to get over being cowards. Because cowards are not going to confess their Lord. Here's some cowards that we've read about recently in a lesson. You're all familiar with this. In John chapter 12, John talks about some people who believed in Jesus. He doesn't say that they were just pretending to believe in Jesus, but they believed in Jesus. Nevertheless, many of the rulers believed in him, but because of the Pharisees, they were not confessing him for fear that they would be put out of the synagogue. It goes on to say they loved the approval of men more than they did of God. We talked about that in a lesson last week.